I want to know is, okay, they have valid concerns if the Palestinians are let out of their cages. So what do we do with that information?
Why do lefties always talk as if Palestinians are actual animals? Like, I feel like liberals are the only people to treat Palestinians like human beings. Like, if you really think about it, like, just think about it really carefully. Okay, just think about it really carefully, and it will all make sense. Okay, liberals treat Palestinians like actual human beings because we are willing to assign them enough autonomy to the point where they are able to make right and wrong decisions. Okay, but in the lefties' view, the only people who have autonomy are Israelis. Okay, and the only people who don't have autonomy are like Palestinians. They are not able to make their own decisions. They're not able to choose for themselves. Okay, they're literally animals to them. Yeah. A means to an end, a way to rhetorically argue back against the tyranny of the United States or whatever. Okay, it's pretty bad.
I don't know. I don't pretend to know the answer to this question. I've heard different solutions proposed. You know, you get like a peacekeeping force of a mixture of like, I don't know, like UAE troops, or do they even have an army? Like, you know, there would have to be like some kind of like outside interventionist, like outside peacekeeping. I don't know. I have no idea how to fix this problem, right? Like, I never.
I think that the Palestinians would welcome like a true, like impartial third party peacekeeping force in Palestine. The Israelis will never accept it.
I think you're right about that. I think under the current administration, I think you're right about that. But that's not. You're just asking me what the hypothetical like best solution would be, right? Are you a one-state person or are you a two-state person? Like, if you could have your way.
I don't think. Firstly, I think a two-state one is practically impossible. That is, it's not going to happen.
But a one-state isn't.
But a one-state, I think, is the most logical conclusion of this.
Logical. Why? Why is that logical?
So a two-state, you've got 500,000 settlers in the West Bank, and their numbers are just going to keep going up. So, okay, how are you going to do this operation where you that many people from the West Bank?
The West Bank settlers complicate things quite a bit.
Gaza is destroyed. So what kind of a state is that? And then the other thing is, it's hard for me to believe that if you had two separate entities, that they would be in peace and in coexistence. Like India, Pakistan is a nightmare.
But a one state that would be peace.
A mangled, yes, because then you live in the same country. You're both about roughly half the population. So
no. I mean, Jewish people, because your plan also includes a full right of return, right?
Yeah, I would support a right of return. Yes.
Yeah, so Jewish people would be a minority there, right?
I do not believe that.
Just by the numbers, right?
Palestinians who.
Can't people just like not fight each other? Is it really like? Is it really that hard? Can people just like make love? Love is nice. Okay, we can have love. All right. Can we just have some peace for once? Can't people just like chill over like Pokemon Go or something? I think that both Serbs, Croats, Israelis, Palestinians, Chinese, whatever the fuck, like just chill over. Just play some Pokemon Go. Okay, go catch Rodom. Okay, fuck. Like, shit. We gotta fight. War is ingrained in our genetics, dude. Oh my god. Dude, fuck. Oh my god.
Left are all gonna come back, but they could be a slight minority. Not much.
And you think you're ever gonna hold on, wait, real quick.
I just want to say one thing. Just because I'm answering these questions does not mean that I think liberating the Palestinians and allowing them to have allowing them to freely roam around their ancestral homeland is contingent upon whether Jews can be a majority or how safe they feel about it.
What do you mean?
I think it's a fundamental right for them to be let out of those Bantustans, those concentration camps that are being constructed for them.
I mean,
so I don't think that, well, if there's too many Palestinians, you can't let them out. I don't subscribe to that philosophy.
Well, I mean, listen, I agree with you that the conditions for Palestinians have been unacceptable for decades. So I'm not going to disagree with you there. I'm just asking about practical solutions. So there's a couple things that really stick out. Well, let me finish my point. Like, there's a couple things that really stick out for me.
I really hate how like when you ask a liberal, okay, like I'm talking about a DGG tier liberal, okay, when you ask a DGG tier liberal, what should we do about the situation in Palestine? What are some practical steps that we can take? The position is typically one of a far left Israeli, okay? One that would be shunned by all Israeli Jews, or most of them at the very least, okay? Getting all the settlers out of the West Bank, that's an extremely, extremely radical thing to advocate for, okay? An extremely radical thing to advocate for, okay? Being anti-Likud, what? Right now, Netanyahu is rising in popularity, okay, because of the actions that he's taking. They don't want to get out Likud right now at the moment, okay? Fuck it. They're on the brink of victory against Iran and Hezbollah and all these people that are getting wrecked. Like, there's no winning. There's no winning, all right? We can't win. There's literally nothing. It's just like liberals are already so far left in terms of like Israeli terms. It's over. Like,
the first thing that I think is really relevant to point out is that at this point, neither the Palestinians nor the Israelis, when you look at the polls, want your outcome. They don't want to share a country.
Yeah. So that's actually a misreading of the polls.
It's not.
No. Do this. I saw Ethan Klein do
it's
that.
not.
No, it is.
It's
because
not.
It's people choosing their number one choice.
Right. Yes.
It's not saying what will you accept.
Okay.
It's what's your number one choice.
Okay, fine. Then let me rephrase. Let me rephrase.
Let me rephrase.
Most Palestinians and Israelis, their number one choice would be something other than what you're proposing. They don't want that's what they're telling people is like they don't want to share a state. Like and you can understand why both groups would.
I don't think that's a correct reading. I think that.
Well, anybody can look at the poll. So like.
If you told if you offered the Palestinians, or if a negotiation was taking place, and what the negotiation was settling on was a single democratic state with equal rights for everybody, no more walls, no more checkpoints, no more cages to stick them in, no more states, equal rights.
But if you're,
I do not think there's any world in which the Palestinians say, "I don't want that."
Well, listen, would you agree that right now that Hamas is more popular among Palestinians than the PA? Actually, I don't know about now. I don't know if you've seen, but there's a lot of protesters right now that are protesting against Hamas. I don't know if you've seen that, but
by the way,
right, and this is something the lefties will never talk about either. The fact that there are tons of Palestinians right now that are protesting against Hamas. Okay, right now in the Gaza Strip, there are Palestinians who are chanting that Hamas is Shia, an insult that would earn you a guaranteed death sentence. Okay, they are giving their all right now to protest Hamas in the Gaza Strip, even though dissent is considered torture and death for them and their entire families. And the lefties do not care about anything that the Palestinians are doing because they literally do not. They are pro-terrorist, they're anti-Palestinian, okay? They're not pro-Palestinian, they're anti-Palestinian. And it's really as simple as that, because again, the fucking Palestinians right now are protesting Hamas. Why? Because Hamas ain't doing shit. And they kill Palestinians. Okay? They're anti-Palestinians. Makes no sense. Okay? It is retarded. It is as retarded as you think it is. Okay? You might be thinking, but Foodshops, it's a little bit retarded, isn't it? No. It's very retarded, okay? We're talking about a mental retardation of the highest order, okay? Mental retardation that we can't even begin to realize is like mental retardation. Like, I am in awe, okay? I'm in awe of how mentally retarded it is.
Let me say,
okay?
there was never like majority majority support for Hamas. There was a plurality, but they never had majority. It's Palestinian politics have always been divided.
I understand that.
Okay.
They won a plurality. They won a plurality of seats in 2004, and then they went to war with PA and kicked them out of Gaza.
Yes.
Right. But for the longest time, Hamas has been more popular than the PA. So if we're talking about like under this one state solution that you're proposing, like who would the most likely leader of the country be? Right now, it'd probably be Hamas. Like, but I don't know what those numbers look like now. But yeah.
What I've heard is Barghouti is in prison, political prisoner. He's not in Hamas. I think he's more affiliated with the PA. And Hamas wants to get him out. He's the number one person they want to get out. He's not Hamas. He's on the other side. But they know he's a unifying figure. And that's why they want him out, and that's why Israel doesn't want to let him out. I think what you
I can't speak to all that, but like
figure, not simply Hamas. Okay, I don't think that's the logical, likely.
I want to double back to the question though, like if you were a Jewish person in Israel, especially after the last 2 years, especially after October 7th, do you think that it would be rational and understandable to have like a complete lack of openness to being potentially?
I too can make up completely like irrelevant names and whoever the fuck in order to justify whatever point I make, okay? Ding Dong Bing Bong said, you don't understand, Hamas, IDF keeps Ding Dong Bing Bong around, you know, because they know that this person would unify all of Palestine and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, me too. I can also make up like completely like stupid fucking things, okay? And if not like stupid fucking things, completely fabricated on some level, okay? Yeah, of course.
Ruled by Hamas. You think that they have a good reason to be like that? No. Why would I ever agree to that?
Yeah, I have no doubt that not a single one of them wants to be ruled by Hamas.
I'm asking you if that's understandable.
Yeah, that's easy to understand. They don't want to be ruled by Hamas. I don't think that's the logical outcome. Hamas already said they would dissolve and disarm.
Really?
I mean, just to broaden it. By
Likud. Not a single Palestinian wants to be ruled by Likud.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
But Likud runs an apartheid regime. Hamas just exists to liberate the Palestinians.
I'm not saying that Palestinians should live under, forced to live under a government ruled by Likud. That's the difference between, you and me.
Well, are you of the mind that we should not push international forces of Western governments, civilians of Western governments, the population should not push for a single state? You think that?
No, I don't think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
How do you not leave the call the second he says Hamas just exists to free the Palestinians? Well, the answer is simple, I think. It's free content. Going around in circles and circling the drain for a content creator is just content, okay? Plus, it's fun, okay?
So,
I think that would be...
They stay in the...
Two-state solution. I mean, listen, I take your point. The West Bank
state look like
Palestinian state would. I mean,
wiped out. West Bank is full of 500,000 settlers.
I don't know. Ideally, if we could rewind the clock and go back to the 48 borders, I feel like that would have been ideal.
I would never be a streamer, Hutches. I would not recommend being a streamer. No, I would not recommend being a streamer. Streaming is. I wouldn't say streaming is too much work. I think it's sometimes just a lot to deal with.
But
we can't.
I understand that. So like, I don't know, 67 borders. I don't know. Like they would have to like, So, obviously there were many times where they tried to negotiate like land settlements and these.
Say the Hassan take. Streaming is harder than any service job ever. Okay. There you go. Are you satisfied now?
These kinds of things and
for expelling 500,000 Jews from the West Bank.
I mean, yeah, I would be, yeah, but like, how would that actually work? Yeah, that's the question. Like, how would that actually look like? I don't know. I mean, and that was the whole point, right? Like, you and I agree.
You're not comfortable with letting the Palestinians out of their cages.
No, I just told you. I've told you so many times over and over again.
Much smaller minority.
What? What did you just say? That's certainly
Africa, the whites were
that's certainly true.
Minority.
But the ANC, for example, they were not running around using the same kind of rhetoric as Hamas, and they certainly weren't doing the same kind of violence. I've had this conversation too many times.
Yeah, of course they were talking
in the last week.
And all that.
No, but no. It's not.
Kill the boar.
No. It's not.
They're doing it then. They're doing it now.
It's not.
Of course, they would say that.
Okay.
But
I'm not going down this.
So South Africa was at war on multiple. But the point is this idea that, okay, you in theory, in principle, support the Palestinians having rights and being able to live in dignity.
Of course.
It's simply untenable because the people who are keeping them in those cages are afraid of some sort of reciprocal violence. And that is an indefinite excuse to keep them in cages.
Not what I said.
Okay, so
I'm going on Live and Learn tomorrow to be struggle session. Based. Dude, can you remind me? Send me a DM on Discord. Well, once you're on Live and Learn, okay? Or whatever the fuck. Okay, please let me know. Because I would love to watch that appearance, okay? A fellow Foodshops viewer going on to Live and Learn to talk with Pisco? To school Pisco, maybe? That's kind of based. Do it.
I didn't say keep them in cages. Why would you say that? I didn't say keep them in cages.
They are in cages.
But why would you say that I said that I want them to stay in cages? Why would you say that? This is why I get so frustrated with you guys.
I'm always happy when, you know, a person from my audience goes to participate in the space that I am also a part of, that I am ultimately, fundamentally, to some degree detached from, okay? Just let me live vicariously through you guys, okay? Because I have been exiled from the space and I've been blocked by destiny. So you know what? Fuck it. All right, go and participate in this space. Okay, do what I cannot. Okay, do what I cannot. Spread the goodwill of Foodshops.
Not say that. Everything that we, I'm not. But that's not the point. I've never said that. Why would you jump to that conclusion?
So what are you advocating for? Because when I say,
do I need to repeat myself again?
What does it look like getting 500,000 Jews out of the West Bank? You say, I don't know.
He said again, has anyone seen a Palestinian in a cage? I'm genuinely curious now. He's probably talking about like IDF prisons or some shit, but I don't even think he knows what he's talking about anymore. I think he's just kind of lost the plot, if I have to be honest. Like, do you really think that this guy has the plot? He literally began the debate by trying to shame Hutch because why? Because why? Because Hutch wouldn't finish the video of a Palestinian kid being killed. That's unhinged. That's unhinged.
But you really know that you won't allow Palestinians from Haifa to return to Haifa, Palestinians from Jaffa to return to Jaffa, Palestinians to reunite with their relatives on the other side of this apartheid wall. That you know you're against.
What are you saying? What are you saying? I'm against, like a full right of return under a one state.
Yeah, you're against the right of return. You're against the one state.
I'm not against the right of return. I'm against a one state solution full right of return because the Israelis are never going to agree to that. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
They are never going to agree to that. They will never agree to being a political minority in that region.
Here's the problem, that you're still thinking in terms of the way this shakes out is with the Israelis agreeing, like you convince them.
So who's going to force them to do it? The United States? Do you really think that? Do you think that's going to happen?
So who's going to force them is to be determined, but of course
it's not going to happen.
States.
It's like, am I actually a Ronald Reagan fan? No. Am I actually a Margaret Thatcher fan? No. Do I actually think the IRA was that bad? Maybe. It's just like, at this point, you know, you kind of get, you kind of like give up being good faith because no one will ever be good faith to you back. It's like, do I think the US has done some bad? Yeah, I think they have. What can what can you really do at some point? Sometimes you just gotta lay back and enjoy the fireworks. Okay. Sometimes there's just nothing you can do, and you know, it is. I just think it's worth talking about a practical solution. All that matters to tank is virtue signaling. Yep. It's just useless. I think it's messed up that advertisers allow horrible stuff to the platform. Yeah, tell that to Twitch. I give up.
Would be the most has the most leverage.
It's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. I wish you guys would just. It's not going to happen. That is never going to happen.
You know they supported South Africa for a long time.
It's different. Not the same thing.
It's not different.
Of course it is.
I remember when I was just a beady-eyed, new to Twitch poll person, and then years passed. The years go by too quick, my friends. I am traumatized. You know, back then, I used to be so optimistic. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna totally change the space. This is gonna be great. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. And then another leftist debate, another leftist debate, and then another leftist debate, and then another leftist debate. Keeps going. It doesn't stop. And I'm just going insane. Okay, I'm going in circles. I'm circling the drain. Okay, I'm circling the drain on my life. That's what's going on. Okay. The years don't start coming, and they don't stop coming.
They're wildly different. What do you mean? It's a different decade. It's a different country. You know, like
people said they were never going to turn on South Africa. They would never sanction, but the tide turned, and they did sanction.
The only way that this would ever happen would be if someone forced Israel to do this, and no country is going to force them to share a state with Palestinians. If anything, they'll force a two-state solution. They'll never force a one-state solution because they know what's going to happen if that happens. And it's not going to be great.
Say they'll force a two-state solution.
If something is forced, then that's going to be the thing.
I can't say that would never happen because I don't know the future. But the problem with two-state is
I can tell you it's not going to happen.
You can explain how can a two-state exist? Gaza's wiped out. The West Bank is full of settlements and 500,000 settlers, and that number is just going to.
You'd obviously have to rebuild, and you'd obviously have to do some kind of negotiation process when it comes to West Bank. You know, but I'm sure we agree with that. Part of the reason why Netanyahu allowed so much of the settlements to expand was because he wanted it to be an obstacle to a Palestinian state, and there are consequences now that we have to deal with practically. And so, you know, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if you can force every single settler out of the West Bank. I mean, that's shitty. But we're just dealing with things that are just like potential practical solutions. And unless the world became comfortable with
mentioning anything practical, you haven't really said anything practical.
I mean, listen, I never told you that, like, right now we are the farthest away from any kind of solution that we've been in for decades, you know? So I understand that, like, this is not going to be I have no.
It was actually a real possibility of a solution. I think what Oslo was, what the creation of the PA was, and the election in Gaza that brought Hamas to power, I think what those were stalling tactics. I think it was just stalling, and the Palestinians are well aware of it. They were traps, and it's been 30 years.
Well, it was the Bush administration, to be clear. It was the Bush administration that basically forced Israel to allow elections, and Israel at the time was saying, like, we think Hamas is going to win. This is a horrible idea. And it was
to coup Hamas.
And Bush like put a lot of pressure on them to allow elections, and then it turned into a shit show. So
the reality is that the Palestinians were not. There was nothing for them to engage in any kind. Even the idea of a peace process is a trap to them at this point, and it's a lie.
What?
Because process is basically stalling. It's time. The process takes a year, 5 years, 10 years. What has happened in those 10 years? The only thing that's happened is the settlements have expanded. There's more settlers in the West Bank.
I agree with you fully right now. I agree with everything.
Wiped out.
I agree with everything you're saying right now.
Anytime you talk about the solution in a process-oriented way, like it's going to take time. You're going to have to wait a couple decades for Gaza to be rebuilt.
Well, obviously it's going to be, well, what do you mean? I mean, these are processes. Processes take time. I don't know if you expect like a summit to happen and then they're just going to iron out a deal on day one. I mean, I feel like you're being a bit pedantic here.
Elimination. You can bring a peacekeeping force in. Okay, you mentioned that. All right, let's go with that. Bring in a peacekeeping force. Okay, throughout the entire territory between the river and the sea. All right, and you get rid of those checkpoints and those walls, and you allow Palestinians to live as equal citizens, as equal human beings.
It's not going to happen in one. It's not going to happen with a one state. It's not going to happen with a one state.
Okay, you're very sure of that, but
because it's never going to happen.
No answers.
I did give you answers. You didn't like the answers. You are never going to.
How do you get the settlers out? You don't really have an answer.
Okay, what's your answer to who's going to force Israel to dissolve its own government and live as a political minority in their country?
So I think there's two.
Who's going to force that? Iran?
I think there's two major possibilities. And you just touched on one of them. Okay, one of them is the Western world, and maybe, you know, other major powers. China's a big trading partner.
Well,
Other
Iran's going to have a problem, right? Iran's going to have a problem. Israel is currently working with the Lebanese government to crack down on Hezbollah. So, like, that's going to be a bit of a buffer zone there. Are they just going to plow through Lebanon?
Do you know why they want to crack on Hezbollah? It's because no one likes Hezbollah, okay, in Lebanon. You really think that there's a bunch of people in Lebanon who is like, bro, we fucking love Hezbollah, dude. You have no idea how much we love Hezbollah. No. Mm-mm. 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 No. That's not how it works. These people don't understand that forcing a one state wouldn't be in his favor.
I don't know what's going to happen in Lebanon, but Hezbollah is well armed. They're not, you know, they can put up a fight. But regardless, the scenario with Iran is not a good one. It's a nightmare scenario. It's World War III. Israel is nuclear armed.
Yeah, the United States would never allow that, obviously. So, like, that's off the table, right?
Well, what we're talking about is potentially a scenario where you have.
Have you guys been fighting in general chat this entire time? Please tell me you guys haven't. Oh my god, thank you guys for fighting in Gen Chat, okay? Thank God, okay? Oh my god, Gen Chat is so annoying. It's just... Thank God, dude, just listen. Wintermute deserves to be bullied, okay? Wintermute deserves to get bullied because he is a tanky, but he's the only endearing tanky to ever exist, okay? He's just lonely, okay? Somebody just be his friend, okay? Whatever, man. He's like the server pet, okay? I name him Bubbles, all right? Like
Iran, Yemen, forces in Iraq,
the United States,
Lebanon,
and the United States,
States, Israel, maybe U.S. allies,
and Iran would get they would get clapped. There's no way that they would be able to successfully push into that state and do what you think they're going to do. They don't have the kind of military to go up with the United States military. Fuck.
This is why I say it would be a nightmare scenario, because it's mutually assured destruction. Israel has nuclear weapons. Obviously, the United States.
That's another reason why Iran is not going to try to invade.
Iran has the potential to develop nuclear weapons fairly quickly.
I mean, they already are.
A very large arsenal of missiles and drones, and they also their other allied forces have a lot of missiles.
This is not going to happen. This is not going to happen.
I think what happened would be essentially mass destruction.
It's not going, but
mass destruction.
And they would not be successful. Israel has way too much.
Successful. Everybody would lose, but I don't think Israel would exist at the other end of that. Israel would be in ruins.
So that seems like a bad idea then, right? Like, so that we can cross that one off the list. Okay, so what's the other? You say my plan is not practical. I'm not giving you any specifics. Okay, like, so what's the other outcome here? Who else is going to force Israel to become a minority?
You could say either two state or one state. I think the two state would be a mess and unsuccessful.
But you don't think a one state would be?
Forces Israel to concede. Another possibility is just Israel succeeds in genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Oh,
that's the other possibility.
Is it about Mango? No, we already covered Mango. Just rewind this.
No, you were talking about like how to get to a one-state solution. Nothing you said makes sense to me. There's like none of those scenarios.
These are the ways this Palestine.
The video title hasn't updated. Really? I'm sorry, guys. My bad.
Palestine-Israel question resolves. It can either resolve in like Armageddon, or it can resolve in the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians.
I mean, I want there to
pressure for a one or two state solution. But personally, because like when we were talking and I was asking you, how do you do this? How do you do that with a two-state solution? And you don't have answers. Nobody has answers to those questions.
Well, I mean, you don't.
Nobody has answers to those questions. So then it has to be a one state, a democratic state.
You know what? I give up on changing the title at this point.
That's a bit of a logic leap. I don't.
The stream has frozen. Oh, you guys can see all the Night Rain videos on the right and Deltarune. Oh no, my secret videos that I watch while playing video games has been revealed. It's so over for me. But I'll fix whatever you guys want. All is not lost. Okay, I just lost the links. Apparently the clipboard only exists throughout. I'm not drunk, I swear. Just exasperated.
Leap. I don't know how you got from A to B on that one. Therefore, it has to be one state. I don't know. I just think you're missing a lot of steps there.
I think if you have an international campaign of pressure to force Israel to concede, end the occupation, it can end in a one-state or a two-state. The trouble with the two states is nobody can answer these basic questions.
Well, let me ask. Okay, but let me. All right, let me ask you a basic question then. So, like, why did the blockade start to begin with?
It began, I believe, 05, 06, and to basically cut off, restrain the economy in Gaza, cut off Hamas.
No, but why? What was happening at that time?
To exert control over.
Nope, you're missing something. You're missing something here.
Control.
What am I missing?
What else was happening at that time?
All about control.
There's a lot happening at what time?
Was there any violence happening at that time?
There's always violence. There's
No.
Not violence.
Was there an escalation of violence that happened around that time?
There's always violence and always escalations of violence. A American-backed coup of the PA fighting Hamas. And the blockade happened gradually. It happened in stages.
Nothing matters.
Do you know that the amount of bombings that happened around that time?
The second Intifada?
No, I'm talking about the aftermath of the second Intifada. I'm talking about like the years like 2001, 2002, 2003. They went from like 3 bombings a year to like over 100. It was a massive escalation of terror attacks that were happening in Israel proper. That's why the blockade happened. So
we're killing Palestinians in large numbers.
I understand that. But I'm saying that was the reason why the blockade happened. It was security measures. So like in your one state,
blockade was always going to happen. Israel.
No, I don't know what you mean when you say that. I don't know what
Israel controls the Gaza Strip. They don't want them to have an airport. They don't want them to access the water.
The reason why they exert the amount of control, they didn't have this level of control before they initiated this like block.
They didn't have access to water for a while. Okay, it's not like it's not permanently like, oh, they didn't have access to water. And in addition, it was because Hamas kept on stealing shit. Okay, they were reusing shit from Gaza to make rockets out of things. Like they were using unexploded ordnances from Israeli like jet planes in order to like in order to make like bombs out of them. They were like taking concrete and like you know what, the ingenuity of Hamas is kind of admirable. It is very admirable, in fact. Okay, I'm not gonna lie about that part. All right, it's just that they're just kind of bad people for taking supplies away from Palestinians. All right, like how could you deny that part? It's just one of the most. You know what? I give up. Okay, it's fine. Whatever.
Immediate. It was pretty much immediate.
It was in response to an escalation of violence. It was a response to a massive escalation of violence. No, you're not listening. It was a response to a massive escalation. It's not a narrative.
Peace.
Look.
Yes, it is. There was a chance of peace. Israel was actually going to.
Arguing with lefties is like pulling teeth. It's just. It's not possible. It's just not possible. It's so hard. It's so difficult.
Give the Palestinians their own state in Gaza, and then evil Hamas screwed it up by doing their.
I'm going to pull it up on my screen. Do you have the stream up? I'm just going to pull it up on my stream. I'm just going to show you what the numbers are. Okay. In 1989, there was 1 bomb attack. 1993, there were 2 attacks. In 1994, there were 5 attacks. 1995, 4 attacks. 96, 4 attacks. 97, 5 attacks. 98, 2 attacks. 99, 2 attacks. 2000, 3 attacks. And then we get to 2001. And oh boy. Now we're getting into the dozens.
I can't believe like we let lefties like get away with calling themselves like pro-Palestinian. they are not pro-Palestinian. God, oh my God. Like, it's like one of the worst PR things ever. Like, the fact that we let lefties get away with calling themselves pro-Palestinian was a mistake, okay? They're, oh my, they're like the farthest away from being pro-Palestinian ever. Okay.
I think in 2000, this is like, look at this escalation here, okay? So 2001 is already it. Wait, hold on. Let me keep going. Let me keep going. So in 2001, this is already a big escalation. We went from like 3 to 2 dozen. And then we get to 2000, and then we get to 2002. We're not talking about tit for tat here. I'm just trying to contextualize the blockade, right?
Tit for tat, though. What you're showing me half of the story. These were tit for tat attacks.
I'm showing you that there was a massive escalation of violence, that the Israelis had like legitimate.
My brain cells are suicide bombing themselves listening to this guy. I know. How do you think I feel? I was like, at the beginning of this, I was like, oh my God, look at this guy. This guy is so fucking retarded. And now I'm like,
security concerns. That doesn't justify them maintaining.
Not say. You
don't think it's legit
occupying a territory.
What is a government's job? What is a government's job? What is a government's job?
Russia has legitimate. Yeah, Russia has legitimite security concerns.
What is no, they don't. No, they don't. They absolutely do not.
is this some rando Hassan chatter? I think it just might be a rando Hassan chatter. I think they're like one of these disingenuous clippers on Twitter. So a little bit more than a chatter, but less than a content creator. Okay, they're like, they disingenuously clip things out of context. Like, these are one of these people, I think. Which is
like, what do you think that? What do you think?
Illegally occupying Ukraine.
What do you
standards? They have legitimate security concerns because Ukrainians are defending themselves.
That's imperialism. You're describing imperialism. They're not defending their own borders. They're expanding their borders. So like,
and what did Israel do?
I'm asking you, what is any government's job? Like, what's their core functions?
I think you've forgotten, because this has been going on for so long, that Gaza was invaded.
I forgot that. What are you talking about?
I forgot.
Because you're saying it's different. It's Russia is illegally occupying Ukraine. If Ukraine strikes Russia in Kursk, you can say Russia has legitimate security concerns. But what does that tell us? That doesn't.
It's a totally different context, though. I don't even know what you mean when you say.
Okay, what's the fundamental difference in the context?
Because Russia is actively invading and expanding their borders. So we're talking about the 2005 blockade. That's what we're talking about.
So Israel did. Oh, so if Russia just sits comfy for a while, Ukrainians no fighting back.
Wait, why are we talking about?
No, it's not a difference. They invaded, they occupied. Russia invaded, they occupied.
I'm trying to get you to understand. I am trying to get you. You are saying that
double standards.
You are saying that Israel took the steps that they did to exert the level of control that they now have over Gaza, simply because they wanted to be able to control like inputs into that region to have basically rule over that. You're saying that they did that because they had these expansionist goals to go into Gaza and take Gaza, but that was never on the table. The Israelis never had any interest in taking Gaza. The only reason it's happening now. No, they didn't. There was never. No, they never had, and they never made any kind of attempt
by land. They controlled it by land, air.
They wanted the West Bank. They were not. They had
Gaza. They control the electricity.
You're talking. Everything. But why did they do that? Was my question.
It's theirs.
Well, what? No, it wasn't because they were trying to.
Theirs. It was always theirs. It was always since '67 when they took it over. They kept it. They never let it go. All they did was move the soldiers from inside Gaza to the perimeter of Gaza.
If they wanted to take Gaza, then why did they withdraw? Why did the Israeli government send in IDF? Let me finish my point. Why did the Israeli government, who was it, Sharon? Why did he send in IDF to physically remove Israeli settlers in Gaza?
Just drink. A martini, shaken, not stirred.
Why is Buchel Team Russia? Take away their mod and give it to me, Moai.
Buchel is not Team Russia. What? Thank you so much for the $5, though. I appreciate that. He's not Team Russia. Huh?
Because those settlements were impossible to protect, so they decided to change their strategy.
Why didn't they just take it over then?
On the perimeter.
Why didn't they just take it over at any
Russia-
point
Look
in
at
the last
madness
7 decades?
Look at the madness that unfolds if they try and take Gaza. There's a resistance group there. That's why they've suppressed resistance in the West Bank.
So you're saying their plan this whole time was to take Gaza? Do you think that was their plan this whole time?
They had Gaza. They had Gaza.
Didn't? What do you mean they had Gaza?
They had Gaza. They had
control over like what goes into the country, but obviously they did not control like who was governing in Gaza.
Gaza wasn't a country.
If they were controlling Gaza,
Shaken, not stirred.
Also gave me cancer, ban him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's not good. Thank you so much for the $2. I fully understand what you're talking about now.
all right. If they were controlling Gaza, why were they allowing Hamas to in their school curriculum indoctrinate the kids to be like super anti-Israeli?
That's like saying if the U.S. government controls your house, do they also control what you teach your children? You're still in the U.S. You're still.
I don't even remember what point we even started on here. How did we go down this route? I feel like these conversations get so.
I don't remember. I think you brought it there.
Listen. I'm glad we spoke. Okay. I'm glad it calmed down a bit. Can I get you before you leave, before I end this conversation, to acknowledge that maybe I didn't watch that video on stream because I was concerned about TOS, had nothing to do with respect for that child? Can I get you to acknowledge maybe that was possible?
Firstly, my thinking was,
come on, Bob,
you just didn't care. My thinking was you just didn't care, but you can prove me wrong. You can go back and watch the interview with the kid.
I am not going to watch anything that is going to get TOS. Can I just get you to acknowledge?
It's not TOS.
With respect, this is my channel. I determine those kinds of risks. You understand that? I'm not going to have you sit here and say,
just
that you should just do it.
Do you think people who are disfigured, like just walking through life with disfigurements?
No. Hold on. I'm not letting you derail this, okay? I want you to say before you go, yes, you are. You're doing the thing. You're doing the thing, okay? I want you, before we end this conversation, can I get you to acknowledge that my intentions had nothing to do with disrespecting that child, and it had everything to do with concern about my channel? Really, after all this, I felt like we had a good conversation. I felt like it got better. We weren't screaming at each other. Can you not see like I'm a human being and I do give a f about kids that are bombs? Can I get you to acknowledge that?
Let me say something. It doesn't matter if you intended to disrespect him. You did disrespect him.
Of course.
Okay. Whether you intended it or not.
You think I disrespected this child because I was concerned, because I was concerned about TOS?
I think you disrespected him. And I'm telling you, people who are walking through life, who have injuries, who have disfigurements, are allowed to stream on Twitch. It would be discrimination if they weren't allowed. The kid was giving an interview. You can find that interview online. You don't have to watch. You can find that video online. You can listen to the kid's interview, and then I'll know, okay, no, he has respect for the kid.
I feel like I'm very optimistic about human beings. I like to think that like most people that I have disagreements with are probably like good people in their personal lives, you know, like I try not to take these kinds of disagreements to any kind of point where I would be making these sort of moral judgments about them in this way. And for you to do this, like for you to say that about me after I've explained to you my reasoning, you do it insist
your reasoning.
For you to insist.
I still thought it was disrespectful.
Well, I mean, he's a clipper.
I'm not denying your reasoning. I still found it disrespectful.
You've disappointed me, young man.
Oh my god.
Okay.
You've disappointed me, and it hurt my feelings.
If you can watch the interview, and then I'll give you props for that.
No. Nah.
There's a part of me that wants to do it and like read the words, but I don't want to give you the satisfaction at this point because you're not giving me any kind of like respect right now. You're totally disrespectful.
That's satisfaction. I said I will give you props if you do it.
I'm not looking for your props.
Okay, no, you
know, especially after the way this conversation. I'm not looking for your props. I think that you are
the other thing
doing real harm to the discourse online. Your name is Disinfo Tracker. Your name is Disinfo Tracker. You are ostensibly in search of the truth, and you have no problem like smearing somebody because.
How do you get Hutch to be disappointed in you? Where do you have to go wrong in life for Hutch to be disappointed in you? Hutch is like too nice. He's like, he's nicer than they can ever deserve, okay? He's too nice, all right? He's way too nice.
You think that I'm so ideologically opposed to you. And so you think it validates, you think you're the good guy in this conversation or whatever.
You've expressed what I consider to be racist double standards.
Oh my
the whole conversation.
Ugh.
Oh, he quit.
Why? Why?
Finally.
Why does it have to be this way? It doesn't have to be this way. We can do a different thing, you know? I'm not built for Bloodsport. I'm really not, because like you guys saw me get animated and upset in the beginning, but it's not I don't like that experience of being angry, and I do assume for the most part the best when it comes to people generally. Like with Vadim, I still feel bad about that whole situation. I don't think he's like a bad guy, you know?
Vadim.
But these people, when they talk about me, it's like he's just the worst. Racist. That's new. That's a new one. I was too woke in, you know, 2020 or whatever. And now I'm being called a racist.
Racist. Finally, we're done. Oh my god. I thought it would never end.